Hello. So, the previous lecture we have understanding of source and nature of data. Right now, we will move up to the classification of the data. Semi-structured, structured, unstructured, and we have some Bayesian structures in within the playlist. Purple continue, but we will continue this video by putting out the notes of the unit 1 of the subject data analytics KIT 6019. So, in our notes, we will discover what really the sources and nature of data is. We have gone through this topics, but actually this thing is for the revision and for some, making you look again about the important points within our discussions. See, we have sources and nature of data. Data collection is the process of acquiring, collecting, extracting, and storing the voluminous amount of data, which may be in the structured or non-structured form, like text, video, XML file, records, or other images used in lateral stage of data analysis. So, as per the definition, the data collection, we're coming across that data collection is a process of acquiring the data, then we need to collect that data, and then we need to, or we can extract from the data source available and storing the voluminous amount of the data, which may be structured or unstructured form like text, video, audio, XML files, record, or other images, which is available on the web, obviously, using the later stage of the data analysis. So, in the subject of the data analysis, actually, it is a we are focusing towards the machine learning. In the machine learning, we are focusing towards the analytics part, and which is analytics part is taking the help of the machine learning and big data. And big data analysis, okay, data collection is in the big data analysis, data collection is the initial steps to analyze the pattern and use useful information from which we will make a decision of the future. The data to which to be analyzed must be collected from the different valid sources. Okay, and valid sources, like an example, if I need to collect data for subject, this subject should be the next semester. Then I should collect from the opinions of the student or the student and the industry persons in the computer science. In the computer science, domain, and then we can proceed for this for the subject option the next semester. And whatever data we are collecting, it will be always in the raw form. The data which is collected is known as the raw form, which is not useful, but on cleaning the impurity and neutralization of the data for the further analysis of the form and information. Information obtained is known as the knowledge. So first of all, we got a data, then we further move towards the raw data, and then it will be provides us the knowledge. Knowledge has a many meanings. Business knowledge, or sales, or enterprise productions, disease, etc. The main of the goal of data collection is to collect the information, rich data. Okay. Data collection starts asking some questions such as what type of data is to be collected and what is the source of collection. Okay. So one must understand how the data, when the data is collected, is the raw data, and then it's converted towards the after the cleaning, it's converted to the impurity, neutralizing the data for the analysis from the forms information. The information obtained is known as the knowledge. Okay. Knowledge has a many meanings like business knowledge of sales of enterprise products, disease treatments, etc. The main goal of the data collection is the collection information in the state. Data collection start with asking some questions. Whenever we are going to collect the data, we always move for the objectives. What are those objectives? What data is to be collected? What type of the data we need to collect? What is the source of that collection? Objectivity of that collection. Most of the data collected are of two types. Like it is known as the qualitative data, which is a group of non-linear data such as mostly focus on the behavior and action of the group. And other one is a quantitative data. And this is numerical form. Obviously, it is we get a definition from we get a definition, according to definition of the numerical form can be calculated using the different scientific tools and sampling. We understand that we need to collect the data. So with the qualitative data, we understand we can collect the data usually in the raw form. It can be in the qualitative data, which work without any numericals like word sentences, and there's a quantitative data, which is like we get different numerical forms and different scientific which is collected from the different scientific tools and sampling data. Let's move back. The source of data can be classified into two types: statistical and non-statistical. Statistical refers to the data that is gathered for an official purpose in corporate sense, an official administrative service. Non-statistical sources refers to the collection of data for other administrative purposes. It's for the private sector. What are the different sources of data? Following are the two sources of data. First is internal sources. When data is collected from reports and records of the organization itself, and it is known as the internal sources. For example, a company publishes annual reports on profit and loss. What is the total sales report? What is the loan? What is the gains? This is all record of the internal source. What is the external source? When data is collected from the outside source outside the organization, they are known as the external sources. For example, if a tour and travel company obtained information on UP tourism from PSRTC, it would be known as an external source of data. According to the data, we can differentiate data into two types. First is the primary data, and second is the secondary data. What is the primary data? Again, what is the primary data? What is really the primary data is all about? Actually, we should understand that data collection. With the data collection sources, we have two mediums. One is the primary data, and second is the secondary data. The primary data we will go for the surveys and interviews. The secondary data we will go for the internal data, like data of the different organizations or external data of the government agencies. Just get an information of it. Primary data, the data which is raw, original, and extracted differently from the official source, is known as the primary data. This type of data is collected directly by performing techniques such as the questionnaire, interviews, and the surveys. Data collected must be according to the demand and the requirement of the target audience on which data analysis is performed. Otherwise, it will be important for the data processing. Two methods of collecting primary data are found. First is interview methods. What is the interview method? The data collected during this process is to interview the target audience by a person called interviewer, and the person who answered the interview is known as the interviewee. So the basic business or related questions are asked and noted down in the form of notes, audio, and video. and this data is stored for processing. These can be both structured and unstructured, like person interviews a former, to telephone, face-to-face, human, etc. Second mode of primary data is the survey method. The survey method is the process of research where a list of relevant questions are asked and answered and noted down in the form of text, audio, or video. The survey method can be obtained both online and offline, like through the websites, form, and email. Then the survey answer was stored for analyzing the data. Examples are online surveys or surveys through social media posts, etc. Third is the observatory methods. The observation method is the method of collection, data collection, in which the researcher keenly observes the behavior and practices of the target audience. Using some collecting tools, it stores or the observed data in the form of text, audio, and video, or any raw formats. In this method, the data is collected directly by posting a few questions on the partition. For example, observing the look of the customer and the behavior towards the product. The data obtained will be sent for the processing. Experiment method. The experiment method is the process of collecting data through performing experiments, research, and investigations. Most frequent used data methods are CRT, RBT, LST, and FT. CRT is known as the complete randomized design, and it is a simple experimental design used in data analytics, which is based on randomization and replication. It is mostly used for the comparing the experiments. What is RBT? Randomized block design is an experimental design in which the experiment is divided into small units called blocks. Random experiments are performed on which each block's results are drawn using a technique known as analysis of variance. RBT was originally from the agriculture sector. What is LSD? LSD is a latent inspired design, is an experimental design that is similar to CRT and RBT blocks, but contains rows and columns. It is arrangements of the chorus and squares. With an equal amount of rows and columns which contains letters that occurs only once in a row. Hence, the difference can be easily found with a fewer error in the experiment. Sudoku puzzle is an example of the latent square design. What is factorial design? Factorial design is experimental design, where each experiment has two factors, each with the possible values of performing with the combination factors are derived. So this is something which is known as the primary data, and we have methods like interview, survey, observations, experimental methods, which is CRT, RBT, and LST, and FT, etc. Now come towards 10. Let's go for the secondary data. What is the secondary data is now? The secondary data is the data which has already been collected and used again for the symbolic purpose. List of data is previously reported from primary data and is two types of source, named internal source and external source. Okay. The internal source. These types of data can be easily formed with information such as market records, the sale record, transaction, customer data, accounting resources, etc. The cost and time consumption is less in obtaining internal sources. Second is external source. The data which can't be found at internal organization can be gained through external third-party resource. The cost and time consumption is more because it contains a huge amount of data. Examples, external source for the government publications, news publications, the Star, General of India, planning commissions, international labor bureaus, syndicate services, and other non-governmental publications. So secondary data can be an internal source. We can get from internal sources or like external sources as well. In the internal sources, we have market records, sales record, transactions, customer data, accounting. It can be gained from external third-party source and external source data. Other sources. What is the sensors data? Then once in the IoT device, the sensors of these devices collect data which we use for the sensor data analytics to track the performance and usage of the products. What is the satellite data? Satellite data is a lot of images and details, data in terabytes on daily basis through surveillances camera, which can be used to collect information. The traffic's most important. It is fast and cheap internet facility. Many forms of data, which is uploaded by different users on different platforms, can be predicted and collected with their permission for the data analysis. Search engines also provide their data through keyword queries and search mostly. In general, we can say primary data means first hand information collected by an investigator. It is collected for the first time. It is original and more. Okay. Primary data is original and more relevant because it was record for our observation. And secondary data, we are getting a second information because we are getting information from the population side. Example of the primary data is the population census conducted by the government of India after every 10 years. Is primary data. It's not originally collected. In the secondary data, it is not like originally collected, right? Obtained from the already published and published sources. For example, data for the taken from the direct telephone directory or the phone number of the company taken from the just dial or other secondary data. Now, what is the method of collection of the primary data? The method of collection for the primary data, direct personal investigation, indirect role investigation, information to correspondent, telephonic interview, mail questionnaire, the questionnaire filled by the individuals. So this will give understanding on what are the sources of data for our data processing in the data analytics. Now, when the data we get a data, we try to classify it into formulations from which we are able to give future analytics a way, from which future analytics will get a way to which model need to be selected, which algorithm need to be selected. Okay. So we understand any quantities of characters or symbols on which operations are performed by the computer. Stored or transmitted in the form of electrical signals and recorded in the magnetic, optical, or mechanical recording medium. This data. What's big data? A big data is a collection of the data that is used volume and growing exponentially with the time. It is the data so large size, complexity, and the traditional data management tools can store or process it efficiently. Big data is also a data, but a huge size. Now, let's understand what are examples of the big data. The most favorable example of the big data is the New York Stock Exchange generates over 1 terabyte of new data per day. 1 terabyte data per day. Social medias. I think so. This 500 plus terabyte of the new data gets ingested into the database of the social media site like Facebook every day. This data is generated in terms of photo, videos, uploads, message exchange, and putting comments, etc. A single jet engine can generate a 10 plus terabyte data in 30 minutes for flight time. Thousands of the flights per day generate data reaches up to petabyte. So actually, we with this huge volume of the data, we are not able to get the result by utilizing and methods. We just need to invent some better methods which help us to push the big data thing from which we can harbor the huge volume, huge velocity, and extensible variety of the data. So for this, we try to categorize the data in the 3 formats, and that is the structured data, semi-structured data, and unstructured data. What is structured data? The structured data is the data whose elements are accessible for effective analysis. It will be organized into a formatted repository that is typically a database. It concerns all the data which can be stored in a database, stored in a table with rows and columns. They have relational keys and can easily be mapped into pre-designed fields. Because those data are mostly processed in the development and simplest way to manage information. Any data that can be stored processed in the form of the fixed format is termed as the structured data. Over the period of the time, talent in computer science is achieved through greater success in developing techniques for working with such kind of data. When the format is well known in advance and also driving value of it. However, nowadays we are foreseeing issues. The size of data goes to huge extent, the typical size are being in range of the multiple gigabytes. Now let's get an example of structured data. What is example of structured data? Employee data table in database is an example of the structured data. employee ID, employee name, gender, department, salary, tax, and all. Semi-structured data is information that does not reside in a relational database, but have some organizational properties that make it easier to analyze. With some process, you can store them in a relation database. It could be very hard for some kind of semi-structured data. Semi-structured exists in space. Semi-structured data can be contained in both the forms of data. We can see semi-structured data in a structured form, which is actually not defined with like what is an example of semi-structured data can be semi-structured data which can be defined as semi-structured data which is little more in structure but it is not defined. The best example of the semi-structured data is maximum. Like in this example, we have a record name of the Prashant, you know, the guy said that is me and it's let's say it is 35. Let's take this proceed towards the data and let's move. What is the unstructured data? Unstructured data, whatever you are uploading on the social media is unstructured data. Unstructured data is a data which is not organized in the predefined manner or does not have the predefined data model. Because it is not a good fit for a mainstream relational database. So for unstructured data, there are alternative platforms for storing and managing. It is increasing prevalent in IT systems and used for organization and variety of the business intelligence and analytics applications. Any data with the known form or the structure is classified as unstructured data. In addition to the size being used or unstructured data process multiple challenges in terms of its processing or driving values of it. A typical example of the unstructured data is heterogeneous data source containing a combination of simple text files, images, videos, etc. Nowadays, organizations have web of data available with them, but unfortunately, they don't know how to derive value of it. This data is in raw form and structured format. For example, Word, PDF, text, media, and also. Now, what are the unstructured data? Unstructured data are of two types, which is captured and it is done with the two types. That first is the capture and second is user-generated data. Okay. What is the captured data? The captured data is the data based on the user's behavior. The next example to understand is it is GPS bias model which helps us this user each and every moment and provides a real-time output. So this is what a captured data is all about. It is data based on the user's behavior. The best example to understand it is the GPS or bias model which helps the user each and every moment and provides a real-time output. Second is user-generated data. It is a kind of unstructured data where the user itself will put data on the internet every moment. For example, tweets and retweets like shares, comments, and YouTube videos. For our purpose, we want to get the thing. What is the difference between a structured, semi-structured, and a structured data? Okay. So let's have an understanding of these three differences. In technology-wise, structured data can be studied as a relational database. Semi-structured data known as similar or deep. Structured data can be known as the character and binary data. What about transaction management? According to the transaction management, transaction varies, concurrency techniques, transaction management adapted from the RDBMS is not mature. No transaction management, no. Next one for the version management. Versioning over the tuples, rows, and tables, etc. Versioning over the tuples of class is possible. Versioning as a whole. Next is flexibility. Schema dependent regressive scheme. Flexible tolerant scheme. Very flexible absence of scheme. Next is scalability. So with the scalability part, we can scale DB schema in the structured data is difficult. In the semi-structured, it's simple, but in unstructured, it's a very scalable thing. The context of robustness. This is very robust. This technology is quite not widespread, and but unstructured data is not robust at all. But in, with respect to query performance, structured query allows complex joins, but in the semi-structured queries, anonymous moves are possible. Only textual queries are in the next job. Only textual queries are possible. Okay. Okay. Next one. So let's have a look at some differences. Structured data is doubly a defined type of data. Structured data is a doubly defined type of data in a structure. Structured data lives in columns and rows, and it can be mapped into predefined fields. Unstructured data is not a predefined data, having a predefined fields. What is different with the quantitative and qualitative data? In structured data is generally quantitative data and usually consists of hard number of things that can be counted. Methods for any analysis including classification, regression, and clustering of the data is the structured data. Unstructured data is generally categorized as the qualitative data and cannot be analyzed and processed using conventional tools and methods. Understanding qualitative data requires advanced analytical techniques like data stacking and data mining. Okay. Let's move. What is storage in data? Where the data on a large set of data is stored. Structured data is generally stored in the data values. Unstructured data is stored in the data lakes. Unstructured data requires more space, while unstructured data requires less space. Very important. With the ease of analysis, structured data is easy to search, both for algorithm and for humans. Unstructured data is more difficult to search, requires processing to become understandable. The next topic, we have a characteristic of the data quality. So in this lecture, we are able to understand what is data is all about, what are the types of data we have, and how we get it, level the sources of predictions, and then we move towards the classification of data. Type of data I have structured, non-structured, unstructured. Then we have detailed discussion there, the differences are all. So meet again in our next video. Till then.